Hey guys, so this is me Natasha and this is the second part of my previous video on important international conventions on environment and biodiversity. So before continuing this video, please watch part 1 in which I have covered up to Basel Convention. So let's start and learn more important conventions. The 11th one is Alliance of Small Island States. It's an intergovernmental organization of low-lying coastal and small island nations. It was established in 1990 and its purpose is to consolidate the voices of small island developing states against global warming. In Indian Ocean, 4 states are its member, that is Comoros, Maldives, Mauritius and Seychelles. One thing to remember here is that India is not its member. Moving to the next one, that is Global Environment Facility. It's an independently operating financial organization to combat climate change, loss of biodiversity, polluted international waters, land degradation and desertification. So initially it was set up as a fund under World Bank in 1991. But in 1992, it was moved out of the World Bank system to become a permanent and separate institution. However, since 1994, World Bank has served as the trustee of the GEF Trust Fund, and GEF serves as financial mechanism for these 5 conventions. You can read their names here. The 13th one is United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development and Rio Plus 20. So it's also called Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, Rio Conference and Earth Summit. It was held in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Rio Plus 20 was also held at the same place in the year 2012. So this summit resulted in following documents, that is Agenda 21, Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, and Forest Principles. So legally binding agreements that were open for signature in this summit were Convention on Biological Diversity, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. These 3, right? Now let's talk about Rio Declaration. It was made after 1992 Rio de Janeiro Summit. It reaffirmed the declaration of the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, which was adopted at Stockholm on 16 June 1972, right? And it had 27 principles. So basically, it recognized the integral and interdependent nature of the earth. The next one is Agenda 21. It is non-binding, voluntary and action plan of United Nations. It is a product of Earth Summit of 1992, and the 21 in Agenda 21 refers to the 21st century. The 16th one is Convention to Combat Desertification. It's a United Nations Convention to combat desertification in those countries experiencing serious drought and desertification, particularly in Africa. So it is the only convention which stem out from direct recommendations of Rio Agenda 21. It was open for signature in 1994 in Paris and it became effective from 1995. Canada has withdrawn, first to do so. Headquarters is in Bonn, Germany, and it is legally binding. The 17th one is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It was open for signature in 1992, Rio Earth Summit. It came into force in 1994. Its secretariat is in Bonn, Germany. 197 are its ratifiers. It is legally non-binding but makes provisions for meeting called protocols. For example, Kyoto Protocol, where negotiating countries can set legally binding limits, right? So it aims to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Anthropogenic means related to human activity. So Kyoto Protocol was negotiated under this framework, and parties to UNFCCC are classified as Annex 1 countries, Annex 2 countries and non-Annex 1 countries, that is developing countries. India comes under non-Annex 1 country, right? So we can say that Annex 1 countries are industrialized countries and economies in transition. And Annex 2 countries are those developed countries which pay for costs of developing countries. That is the non-Annex 1 countries. The 18th one is Kyoto Protocol. It was negotiated under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, adopted in 1997 in Kyoto, Japan, and came into force in 2005. So this protocol gave binding targets to Annex 1 countries, that is industrialized countries and economies in transition. This protocol's first commitment period started in 2008 and ended in 2012. A second commitment period, which was agreed in 2012, known as Doha Amendment to the Protocol, but this hasn't entered into force yet. And target under this protocol applies to following greenhouse gases, that is carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur hexafluoride, and two groups of gases, that is hydrofluorocarbons and perfluorocarbons. These names are very important. So the next one is Paris Agreement. It's under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It deals with greenhouse gases emissions mitigation, adaptation, finance, starting in the year 2020. So close, right? So it was open for signature on 22 April 2016. 22 April is also the Earth Day. So its aim is holding the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, recognizing that this would significantly reduce the risks and impacts of climate change. So the contribution that each individual country should make in order to achieve the worldwide goal are determined by all countries individually and are called nationally determined contribution. India's proposed targets are to reduce emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 level, to achieve 40% of electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030 with help of transfer of technology and low cost international finance, and to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forests and tree cover by 2030. The last one that I will cover in this video is Green Climate Fund. It's within the framework of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It is founded to assist developing countries in adaptation and mitigation practices to counter climate change. It was formed in 2010, and the first mention of concept in Copenhagen Accord in COP 15 came under this, and it was formalized in COP 16, that is Conference of Parties 16 at Cancun, and World Bank is chosen as a temporary trustee of this fund, and its headquarters is in Incheon, South Korea. So it is intended to be the centerpiece of efforts to raise climate finance of like $100 billion a year by 2020, and this is not an official figure for the size of the fund itself, however, and there is no clarity about from where money will come in this fund, right? So the second part of my video ends here, guys. Do like, subscribe and share. Thank you all.